If you've ever looked at a tiny, perfectly round pill in the palm of your hand and wondered exactly how the manufacturer guarantees that it's going to do exactly what it's supposed to do without fail, well, you are in the right place. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're demystifying the incredibly high-stakes world of pharmaceutical validation. We're going to be using some fantastic insights from a presentation by Karake Shraddha Makchindra to break down these complex industry standards. And our main goal today is taking the heavy jargon out of the factory and making sure every concept is super easy to understand just by listening. So let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. 1. The promise of precision. 2. Calibration versus validation. 3. The qualification journey. 4. Maintaining the gold standard. And finally, 5. Why consistency saves lives. Let's start with number 1.
Section 1. The promise of precision. Imagine a world where a headache pill is sometimes twice as strong as it should be, and other times it literally has zero active ingredient. That is the massive problem of inconsistent medication. And to prevent it, the industry relies on absolute precision. So let's start with our first major concept, calibration. The technical definition is checking and adjusting an instrument so it measures accurately against a known standard. But let's make that a bit more real. Think about a musician right before a big concert. They don't just walk out on stage and start jamming, right? They tune their guitar. They compare the sound of their strings to a known perfect pitch, and they adjust it until it matches. Calibration is basically just tuning the instruments of a pharmaceutical factory so they hit the exact right note every single time. Right, so that brings us to validation. The source defines this as the documented act of proving that any procedure, process, equipment, material, or system actually leads to the expected results. Another way to think about this is baking. If calibration is tuning the guitar, validation is like proving that your recipe, your oven, your ingredients, and your mixing technique will all combine to produce the exact same perfect cake without fail, no matter how many times you bake it. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how these two concepts interact, because people actually mix them up all the time. But as the presentation makes crystal clear, calibration is actually a crucial puzzle piece inside the larger picture of validation. Calibration focuses solely on the accuracy of one single instrument. Validation is the whole overarching umbrella. It focuses on the entire process consistently producing the quality we expect. You simply cannot have a validated process if your instruments aren't calibrated. Section 2. Calibration versus validation. Let's see how this works on the factory floor. Let's look at the very foundation of science itself, weights and measures. Because honestly, if a company can't weigh their ingredients correctly, nothing else matters. Here is what keeping the instrument tuned actually looks like. Step 1. You use certified standard weights. And get this, these weights are often kept under protective glass, because even a little bit of dust from the air settling on them could throw off their exact mass. It's that precise. Step 2. You check the machine's accuracy at different ranges, not just one. Step 3, you carefully record observations and tweak the instrument if it's even slightly off. And Step 4, you maintain a super meticulous calibration logbook and follow standard operating procedures, or SOPs. But how do companies even know what to check and when? Well, that comes down to scope and frequency. A pharmaceutical organization has to clearly define exactly what needs validation and how often to do it. It's a highly organized structure, and maintaining these strict standards gives them a massive advantage, mostly by preventing disastrous errors way before they happen, which creates a really reliable manufacturing backbone. Section 3. The qualification journey. So, we have our tuned instruments and our perfected recipes. Now we need the heavy machinery. But before we get into the timeline, we need to define qualification. It's the action of proving and documenting that equipment is properly installed, works correctly, and leads to expected results. So going back to our baking analogy, if validation is about the entire cake baking process, qualification is specifically about the oven itself. Is it a reliable oven? Does it heat evenly? That's what we're proving. The pharmaceutical industry absolutely loves its acronyms. But let's decode this alphabet soup by following the journey of one piece of equipment. Phase 1 starts with URS, the User Requirement Specification. This is basically the company saying, hey, here is exactly what we need this machine to do. Next is DQ, Design Qualification. Engineers look at the blueprints and go, yep, this design meets those needs. Then comes FAT, the factory acceptance test. Before the machine ever leaves the manufacturer, they test it to make sure it actually works. And finally, SAT, the site acceptance test. The machine gets shipped to the pharma facility and tested again just to ensure it survived the truck ride and still works in its new home. Let's move to the next phase and see how this builds into the final testing hurdles. First up is IQ, installation qualification. Put simply, is it plugged in right? Are the pipes connected correctly? Next is OQ, operational qualification. When we turn it on and push the buttons to their extreme limits, does it operate safely? And finally, PQ, performance qualification. This is it, the ultimate test. Can this machine actually make our specific drug perfectly, day after day, under real-world conditions? Only after passing PQ is the machine truly ready to go.
Section 4. Maintaining the gold standard. You might think that once the machine passes that final PQ test, the job is done, right? No way. Maintaining that validated status isn't just a set-it-and-forget-it deal. It requires constant, ongoing vigilance. Companies have to continually streamline their validation processes. They have to manage re-qualification, meaning they test the equipment all over again on a set schedule just to be absolutely sure it hasn't drifted. And this is critical. They enforce strict change management. If you replace one single tiny valve on a massive machine, you have to completely prove that that change didn't alter the quality of the medicine.
Now, why are pharmaceutical companies so incredibly intense about all this? Well, they answer to some global heavyweights: the World Health Organization, the US FDA, the International Council for Harmonization. These are the regulatory authorities writing the guidelines. And all this knowledge is grounded in foundational texts by folks like Lockman and Lieberman or Bernard T. Loftus. These entities enforce the rules for one main reason: global compliance and, most importantly, patient safety.
Section 5. Why consistency saves lives.
All of this, the calibration, the logbooks, the alphabet soup of IQ, OQ, PQ, it can definitely seem like a giant mountain of paperwork. But we have to remember the profound reality at the end of the production line. So the crucial point is summarized perfectly right here. Validation ensures quality and consistency. Qualification ensures equipment reliability. When the equipment is perfectly reliable, the process is consistent, and the medicine does exactly what the doctor intends. That is the ultimate purpose of this whole system.
It is so easy to take modern medicine for granted. But the next time you hold a perfectly manufactured pill, I want you to ask yourself, how many standard weights, factory tests, and rigorous validation protocols did this single dose go through before it ever reached your hands? The hidden, everyday precision of pharmaceutical validation is literally a modern marvel. Thank you so much for learning with us today on This Explainer. Keep asking questions and keep exploring the incredible systems that shape our world. Catch you next time.